Hi everybody. Thanks again for joining us for another Facebook Live event this beautiful Thursday morning. I am Jessica Carrier, the Outreach and Education Manager with the Joe Davis Conservation Foundation. And this morning we are here at Horseshoe Mound. Horseshoe Mound, many of you have probably been here if you're in the Joe Davis County area. Horseshoe Mound is located just south of Galena, Illinois, right off of Blackjack Road. There's a big old sign on the east side of the road, and then you take a driveway that leads you all the way up to the top of the hill. Horseshoe Mound is so beautiful right now. You can see we have prairie flowers in bloom, these beautiful oak savannas that are well established, beautiful, nicely mowed walking paths. So if you're not a huge hiker, these are pretty easy paths. I want to remind everybody that Horseshoe Mound is open to the public dawn to dusk. This is a really cool nature preserve, and I know right now there's a lot of people that are really appreciating these nature preserves. It's a way to get outside, get some fresh air, and you can even just bring your whole family out here and just have some space to run around and enjoy some nature. So while we're here at Horseshoe Mound, we're going to take you on a virtual tour of Horseshoe Mound. Last year we did monthly Experience Horseshoe Mound tours up here, but since this year we can't do any in-person tours, we're going to take you on a virtual tour today. And throughout this tour, if you have questions, just go ahead and type them in, and we can answer your questions throughout the session today. So feel free to ask any questions about anything I'm talking about or things that you're seeing. It's nice to engage with all of you joining us. So the first thing I want to point out here at Horseshoe Mound is the beautiful overlooks. We have 4 nice overlooks right on top of this mound. You can see for miles. And when you look out over these overlooks, you can see the hilly landscape of the Driftless Region. If you've never heard that term before, the Driftless Region is the area that we call this northwest corner of Illinois. It also encompasses northeast Iowa, southwest Wisconsin, and southeast Minnesota. This is the Driftless Region, and it gets that name because this area was not glaciated during the last ice age about 10,000 years ago, which in geologic time, it's pretty recent. And so the glaciers did not cover this area. That means that a lot of this hilly terrain, it never was flattened by moving glaciers. There was never glacial till deposited on top of it like we see in the surrounding farmland. So there's a lot of hills and meandering rivers and exposed bluffs. Some of the oldest bedrock is found here in this Driftless region. This is a very unique little corner here. If you've driven through Joe Davis County or parts of Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, you probably have seen a lot of this hilly landscape. So that's what we call the Driftless region. Very cool, very beautiful. My favorite place in the world. So you can see this Driftless region at all of the overlooks. Another thing you can see here at Horseshoe Mound is the Mosaic of Ecosystems. We have oak savanna ecosystems that have been established. Well, they've been restored, and then for about 12 years now, they've been established here. And you can tell that the bird life, they are really using these old oak savannas as great nesting, and the insects in the understory and the grasses are feeding the whole food web here. These oak savannas are really great and unique to this Midwest area. Big, beautiful oaks. We hardly ever see them anymore. And we also have these beautiful prairies that are in bloom right now. If you joined us last week for Wapello, you probably saw Michelle talking about a lot of the cool prairie plants, and we have a lot of the same prairie plants blooming here. This one here is that foxglove beard tongue that you're seeing everywhere right now. Just seas of this beard tongue, really beautiful. And now we're starting to see more of the yellow false sunflower. That's this guy here, this false sunflower. Very beautiful, very cool. So these ecosystems here at Horseshoe Mound, they're kind of intermixed with each other. And this is what we call a mosaic. And the oak savannas and the closed canopy woodlands and these open prairie areas, they serve for habitat, as habitat for hundreds of different species, thousands of different species, insects, birds, wildlife, all kinds of stuff live here. It's really high in biodiversity, which is really important for overcoming any natural disasters. You will notice that everything here is kind of working together within this food web. The birds are feeding on the insects and they're feeding on the plants. And if we were to remove one species out of this ecosystem, the entire food web would have to readjust and everything would have to readapt. And if you have a lot of biodiversity, that happens pretty quickly. They're pretty resilient with high biodiversity. But if you don't have a lot of diversity in your system, it's going to take a long time for your ecosystem to bounce back or be able to withstand some of these natural disasters. So,
Jess, is this a ecosystem that we would come across just randomly in the Midwest anymore?
Well, you know, it's not very common because so much of the Midwest is really great agriculture land. So it's not very common to come across these prairies anymore. In this area, the hilly area, you can't drive a tractor over these giant hills. So that is why a lot of these nature preserves and natural prairies are now found in areas that are not great for agriculture. So, and these ecosystems also, especially the oak savannas, really rely on human influence these days because the landscape has really changed so much since European settlement here that there are parts of the food web that are just not found here anymore. For example, the bison is no longer in Illinois, so we will never expect to see oak savanna in this area without human influence. We will need to always have a management plan and prescribed burns and planting new trees or allowing younger trees to thrive. We'll always need that human influence here as long as we have extirpated some of those key components. So this nature preserve is a really great place to come and see. You're not going to come across this everywhere you go. It's not a huge hiking trails. I think there's about 3.5 miles here. A lot of them are pretty level, so if you're a beginner hiker, this is great for that. But if you're looking for a bit of a workout, you can take the loop that goes all the way down to the lower prairie, and you can encounter some pretty steep hills there. So there's about 3 miles of trails here at Horseshoe, and you probably are know that we are opening more trails soon once we have our restoration established on the hillside.
So will that area, the Richardson addition, the restoration work, will that eventually look like this?
So, you know, it will look pretty similar to this. It'll be a little bit different. When I look at the Richardson addition over there, it is these big open grown oaks on a hillside with low-hanging branches, big wide crowns like you see here. But you know, every oak ecosystem is a little bit different. So it will be very similar to this, where you have those big old oaks, and a lot of those oaks are over 100 years old. You can see them from afar that they're already pretty big, and the restoration crew's done a great job of releasing them and opening them up, and getting rid of a lot of the cedars and black locusts and maples that are in the understory. So it will look a lot like this, though. Yeah. Okay, so if you guys have more questions, you can feel free to ask questions as we go. Otherwise, I think that we should take just a short little walk down this way, show you the kind of towards the Cooke Overlook. This is one of my favorite spots to go at Horseshoe Mound. You get to walk by all the beautiful prairies, see what's blooming. You get to walk through the oak savanna branches that are overhanging the trail.
Speaking of cedars, we see some over here.
Yeah, we do.
So if this was, these are the first species to show up?
Yeah, usually, so this is what, so it's called a pioneer species, is one of the first species to show up and get established. And cedars are really good at coming up in that understory underneath those oaks. And then once they get tall, they create a shaded area underneath that oaks don't do well in shade, but other species do, like maples and basswoods. So all of those shade tolerant species really start to take off. And that's when you get your closed canopy woodland ecosystems. So it really changes an entire ecosystem. Still great, you know, still functions as a lot of great food and nesting habitat, a lot going on in these ecosystems. But we've really changed the landscape so much that we hardly ever see oak savannas anymore. So that's why they're so important. It's really an endangered ecosystem. So yeah, this is a great example of what you might see when an oak savanna is kind of going into its later successions, it's becoming more of a woodland. And there's some birds flying around. Oh,
Maureen is asking,
yeah.
what's the bird population like out here?
Oh my gosh, birds everywhere. I've been, so gosh, we have seen recently, we see all kinds of birds. You can hear them right now. Raptors, perching birds, cavity nesters, all kinds of birds, grassland species. We saw an indigo bunting and a scarlet tanager sitting on the same branch right next to each other. It was so cool. You don't usually see those two hanging out right next to each other. If you're a birder, maybe you see them more often than I do, but I think that's really cool when you see these birds like that. If you were to go all the way out to the end here, that is a great spot to see raptors. When you stand out at the end of the Cooke Overlook, you are actually above where the raptors are kind of flying around. A lot of turkey vultures, you'll see them kind of flying and swooping. They ride on these thermal updrafts with their wings in a V shape. And it's really cool because you're actually above the turkey vultures and looking down on them as they're kind of riding these updrafts.
Great, let's go check that out.
We should. It's really cool. Yeah, lots of cool birds here. If you come to Horseshoe Mound with some kids, you should try out our children's adventure. Our children's adventure is a little adventure that you can take with a book, and we've taken out our books right now, but you can still find the story online on our website. Just look for Children's Adventure. And it actually starts at this tree right here. There's a little doorway down there. And you can take your kids on a little children's adventure. You read the story in the book, and then on this rock, there's a riddle written on the rock that leads you to the next point. So you have to kind of think about, okay, what is this riddle telling me? Where do I think the next stopping point is? It's really fun for kids to do that. I just love this part of the walk with these big old oaks overhanging. The birds in these oak ecosystems too, they love to nest here. It's something that we don't find anymore because oak ecosystems aren't very common. But so when you see so many birds here, I think that tells me that this is a well-established ecosystem, and we should do everything we can to keep these. It's pretty rare. And here is the Cooke Overlook. This is such a beautiful spot. So I'll let you get down to wherever you guys can see it. And oh my God, it's so beautiful. You can see the Mississippi off in the distance. You can even see the water towers in Dubuque, Iowa. You can see Horseshoe Mound up here in the northern. the little tiny cars driving on the highway down below. You know, right about now is when we should be seeing some turkey vultures circling. They almost always come out right around 10 o'clock. It's like clockwork. I was seeing some turkey vultures up the trail a little bit, so maybe they're a little bit higher in the sky, or maybe the thermal updrafts are more over that direction. Very cool spot to see birds here. Very beautiful. Good spot to bring the kids.
Horseshoe Mound?
So you can come to Horseshoe Mound dawn to dusk, so sun up to sundown. So the preserve is closed at night. Nobody's allowed up here at night. Typically we do have one event at night in August to kind of showcase the Perseid meteor shower, and that's really the only time that it's open at night. But this year, we're not going to have that event, or it may look very different. That's still something to figure out. So, but open to the public, dawn to dusk. So, if you guys have any more questions, or if you would like to ask questions later on, that's okay too. This is a beautiful place to come check out. And remember how rare this is in the Midwest. It's not very common to find these nature preserves that are preserved in perpetuity. So if you live in this area, you're pretty lucky to have it.
Nancy is asking, what is the elevation at the top of the mound?
What is the elevation at the top of the mound? I really don't know. It's a good question. I mean, if I had to guess, maybe not very high, 1,200. What is it, 1,400? 400? Okay, maybe it's 400.
And Maureen's asking about, are dogs allowed?
Dogs are allowed on a leash, yes. So it's really important to keep your dog on a leash because there's, nesting birds, a lot of them in the grasslands that your dog could disturb. But there's a lot of other dangers that your dog could get into. So just remember to keep your dog on a leash. Very dog friendly, great place to bring your dog. Okay, well, thank you for joining us for a virtual tour of Horseshoe Mound. And thank you to our sponsor, the First Community Bank of Galena, Apple River State Bank. They've been a really great sponsor to us, really great partners, and we really appreciate their sponsorship.
And our schedule.
In our schedule. So we will not be having a Thursday morning Facebook Live event next Thursday. We're going to take that week off for the holiday. But then the following Thursday on July 9th, we are going to go herping, which is looking for reptiles and amphibians. We're going to go herping at the Hertzville Interpretive Center in Jackson County, Iowa. So come join us on July 9th to come see some herps. Okay, thanks everybody.